Welcome to Love Lies Chronicles.
It's strange how the most painful shifts in a relationship don't happen with shouting or slamming doors. They slip in quietly. One day, she stops texting you good morning, and it doesn't feel like a crisis. Another day, she gets dressed up, full makeup and perfume, but says she's just going out with coworkers, no invite or details. Still, you tell yourself it's fine. That's what I did. For months. I thought maybe I was being paranoid. She had a stressful job, I told myself. Maybe she just needed space. People change over time. Wasn't that normal? But the truth was, I had started to feel invisible in my own home. There was this dullness between us, this unspoken void that seemed to grow a little wider every night. The warmth we used to have, our dumb little inside jokes, the way we used to share dinner, her curling up next to me during late-night movies, all of that was gone. Replaced by scrolling on her phone. Or silence. She wasn't even distant in a surprising way. Just absent. Like she was physically there, but some essential part of her had left months ago. I noticed it first in the way she touched her hair when she thought I wasn't looking. That extra flick of the wrist. The lip gloss I hadn't seen her wear in years. New dresses showing up in the closet, tags still on. But when I asked if she wanted to go out, just the two of us, she'd wave me off. Said she wasn't in the mood, or that work had drained her. Still, I didn't accuse her of anything. I kept trying to show up, making dinner, folding laundry, listening when she talked about her deadlines. Just doing what a husband does, I guess. Holding on even when you're not sure what you're holding on to anymore. Then there were the nights she came home late. She always had a reason, team drinks, someone's birthday, traffic. No big deal, right? That's what I told myself. Until it started happening more often than not. And every time, she'd return with that same distant look in her eyes, like she was already thinking about where she'd rather be next. I tried to talk to her one night. Set her down, gently asked if we were okay. She looked up from her phone and blinked, like I had interrupted a dream. "We're fine," she said flatly. "You worry too much." That was it. Not even a question back. No, why do you feel that way? Or, what's bothering you? Just a quick dismissal, like the topic didn't deserve more than a few seconds of attention. And yet, when she went out, she became this entirely different person. Her energy changed. I saw it in the way she stood in front of the mirror, more deliberate. She'd hum to herself while applying her mascara, adjust her necklace with care, tilt her head and smile at her own reflection like she was about to meet someone who mattered. Not me, though. She hadn't looked at me like that in years. One evening, I overheard her on the phone, walking past the bathroom door she'd left slightly ajar. Her voice was soft, a little playful, and I heard her laugh in a way I hadn't heard in a long time. I couldn't make out every word, but it was enough to know the tone, familiar, relaxed, maybe even flirty. I stood there, not breathing, for longer than I care to admit. And then I walked away. What would I have even said? That's the part most people don't understand. You don't blow up in those moments. You don't storm in with accusations. You go quiet. You replay conversations in your head, looking for clues you might have missed. You start to doubt your own memory. Had she always been this distant? Did I imagine the good parts? Or did they just fade while I wasn't paying attention? I found myself noticing things I never used to care about. The way she angled her phone away from me when she texted. How her work trips started including weekends. How she stopped touching me in passing, no more brushes of her hand against my back as she walked past. It was like she had trained herself to stop acknowledging me physically, one day at a time. But still, I didn't confront her. Because I didn't know what I'd even be confronting anymore. She hadn't said she was unhappy. All I had were fragments, changes in routine, a shift in tone, a gut feeling I couldn't shake. What I did know, though, was that I had never felt more alone than I did sitting right next to my wife at dinner. She still sat across from me at the table. Still asked about my day sometimes. But there was no curiosity in her voice. No warmth behind her questions. Just a script, read without meaning. That night, after we ate, she stood up and casually said, "I'll be out with the girls tomorrow. Don't wait up." Then she walked off. And just like that, I realized something I couldn't unsee. She had already checked out. She was just waiting for me to stop pretending everything was fine. And for the first time in months, I started to wonder if I should let her have exactly what she wanted. It was a Thursday night, one of those slow, quiet evenings when the world outside feels too tired to move. I had just finished cleaning up the kitchen. She said she was going to take a bath, but she'd been in the bedroom for over 30 minutes by then. I wasn't looking for anything. I was just heading down the hall to grab the laundry basket from the closet. Then I heard it. At first, it was muffled, just her voice. I paused, because something about the way she was speaking made me stop. There was a softness there I hadn't heard in months. Laughter, too, light and unguarded. The kind of sound people make when they feel entirely comfortable. I wasn't trying to snoop. I didn't press my ear against the door. I just stood still. And I heard him. His voice came through the speakerphone, clear and smug, like he had nothing to hide. He was talking about something stupid, his gym routine, I think. She giggled. Then he said it. She never screamed your name like she did mine. Silence. On both sides. Even he seemed to know he'd pushed a little too far. I waited for her to correct him, to say he was out of line, to laugh it off awkwardly. But she didn't. Instead, I heard the bedsheets rustle, and then her voice, soft and flat. Don't say that. That's not true. Or, that was wrong of me. Just a lazy attempt to contain something that was already out. My heart didn't drop. Not the way you'd expect. I didn't stagger back or feel rage boiling in my chest. What I felt was something quieter. Something final. Like the sound of a door clicking shut from the inside. It wasn't even about the words. It was what those words confirmed, that I had been living beside someone who didn't just move on, but did it while pretending not to. I didn't barge in. I just turned around, walked to the laundry closet, and grabbed the basket like nothing had happened. My hands moved automatically, but my mind was somewhere else. She came out later, hair damp, skin glowing, robe loosely tied like she'd just come back from a spa. She glanced at me and smiled faintly. Then she walked past without saying anything. That night I lay on my side of the bed, staring at the ceiling while she breathed steadily next to me, completely unaware that something had just died. The next morning, she was all chirpy, talking about some weekend plans she wanted to make with her coworkers. Said she might stay over at a friend's house Saturday night. I nodded, told her to enjoy herself. That afternoon, I left work early and went home. Not to confront her or to explode or accuse or catch her in the act. I just needed to be in the house alone, to feel what it was like to move through the space without her presence hovering nearby. I sat on the edge of the bed where she had been talking to him. I imagined what her face looked like during that conversation. Relaxed. Not a single thought given to the man who folded her laundry and restocked the bathroom every week. Then I opened the top drawer of her nightstand. I wasn't searching for anything specific. I just wanted to see what she kept close when she thought no one was watching. There wasn't much. Lip balm, a notebook, some receipts, but tucked between a few pages of her planner was a photo strip from a booth. One of those cheap ones you take in malls. Her, laughing, leaning against a guy I didn't recognize. His arm was around her neck, pulling her close. Her eyes were closed in the last one, her head tilted into his shoulder like she belonged there. I put it back exactly how I found it. No texts. No burning down the house. That night, she came home with Thai food and dropped it on the counter like she'd done something generous. Thought you might be hungry, she said. I thanked her. We ate in silence. She told me a story about a coworker who embarrassed herself during a Zoom call. I laughed when she paused, but I don't remember the details. My mind was elsewhere, already ahead of this conversation, already packing boxes she didn't know I was going to carry out. After dinner, she went into the living room and curled up on the couch with her phone. I stayed at the table, watching her. The ease in her posture, the calm in her breath. She really believed I didn't know. She believed I was too slow, too naive, too spineless to ever notice. And that's when I knew what I had to do. Not revenge or a trap, just a shift. A real, irreversible one. The part of me that still wanted answers? He was gone. The man who still held out hope? Buried under weeks of indifference. What was left was someone quieter, sharper. Done. She walked into the bedroom later that night, setting her phone on the charger without looking at me. Slipped under the sheets and turned away from me, like she always did now. Not even a good night. I watched the back of her head for a few minutes, then turned off the light. But I wasn't closing my eyes. Because the next part wasn't going to be a conversation. It was going to be a reminder of what happens when you think someone's too decent to leave. The invitation came casually, like everything else she said lately. Half-thought, offhand, as if the outcome didn't matter. We were sitting in the kitchen, plates from dinner still untouched in front of us. She had barely eaten, pushing food around with her fork while scrolling through her phone. She didn't even glance up when she said it. A friend might come by tomorrow, she mumbled, fingers flicking across the screen. What kind of friend? I asked, keeping my tone neutral. She paused for half a second, enough to let the silence bloom into something uncomfortable. Just someone I know from work. He's in the area. That was it. No name. No explanation. I nodded, took another bite, and didn't press her. She looked relieved that I hadn't. Maybe she thought I didn't care, or maybe she was just hoping to avoid the conversation entirely. Either way, the message was clear. She wasn't hiding it because she was guilty. She was flaunting it because she thought I wouldn't do anything about it. The next day, I left work early again. I told my boss I wasn't feeling well, which wasn't a lie. I just didn't mention that the sickness was all internal. By the time I got home, the driveway was already occupied by a silver SUV I didn't recognize. Her car was parked behind it. I pulled up across the street and sat there for a while, engine off, watching the windows. The living room curtains were open just enough to catch glimpses. Movement. Shadows. Her laugh. Clear even through the closed doors. I waited, because I wanted to give myself space before stepping into the moment that would finally confirm everything. Eventually, I walked inside. Quietly. No heavy footsteps. Their voices drifted toward me from the hallway. I could tell they didn't hear me come in. They were too wrapped up in each other's presence. I stayed just outside the doorway, around the corner, close enough to hear every word. He had that smooth, overconfident tone that guys like him use when they think they've already won. "You know," he said, chuckling. "She never screamed your name like she did mine." There it was again. The same line. The same arrogance. This time, said proudly, out loud, in her house. My house. He sounded proud of it, like it was some trophy he'd earned, not a wrecking ball he'd thrown into someone's life. She didn't scold him. She didn't even correct him. She laughed. And that laugh, soft, like it belonged to someone who had never been my wife, was the sound that finally flipped the switch inside me. I stepped into the room. They both turned, startled. He froze, eyes widening. She dropped her phone. Her face went pale, but not from guilt, more like panic, because she hadn't expected to be caught in the middle of enjoying it. He opened his mouth, probably about to say something cocky, or defensive, or stupid. I cut him off. "She's all yours now." He blinked. I walked across the room, calm as I'd ever been, and stopped just in front of him. The guy had a few inches on me, broader shoulders, younger maybe. None of that mattered. "She never screamed my name?" I asked quietly. He nodded slightly, thinking he was about to deliver another blow. I smiled. "Just a little." "Then enjoy the echoes," I said. "Because that's all you'll have. She's hollow now." The words hit harder than I expected. Not for him, for her. Her mouth opened slightly. She looked at me, eyes blinking like she was waking up from a dream she hadn't realized was real. She opened her mouth to speak, but no words came. That silence? That flicker of realization in her face? That was the worst part for her. Because in that moment, she understood what I had just done. I hadn't yelled. I had just let go. Right there, in the living room we once decorated together. In front of the man she thought she'd replaced me with. I stripped the moment of show and gave it back to her wrapped in apathy. She started saying something. Some version of, "Wait, can we talk?" But I was already walking to the hallway closet. I grabbed the overnight bag I had packed the night before, slung it over my shoulder, and walked toward the door. Her voice chased me, stumbling over itself. "Where are you going?" "To find peace," I said, not even turning around. The guy didn't say a word. It was the beginning of something he hadn't bargained for. Because she looked lost. And that was before everything really fell apart. She didn't call that night. Didn't check to see where I went or if I planned to come back. That kind of silence, the thick, echoing kind, isn't about peace. She was trying to decide whether I meant it. Whether this was just a tantrum or something final. But I had nothing left to say. The next morning, I woke in a hotel room with a broken air conditioner and stiff sheets. It wasn't glamorous. But it was mine. The quiet in that space felt clean. For the first time in months, I didn't feel like I had to brace myself for a sarcastic remark or an indifferent shrug. There was no one there to suck the air out of the room with their detachment. I made coffee, sat on the edge of the bed, and opened my laptop. I'd already started preparing weeks ago, though I hadn't known it then. Little steps, checking on my individual bank account, revisiting old emails with the mortgage documents, reading articles about what to do when a marriage ends quietly, not in flames but in frost. By noon, I had scheduled an appointment with a divorce attorney. No surprising, just a simple consultation. Her silence continued. But behind that silence, I knew the wheels were turning. She wasn't reaching out because she was gauging how far I'd take this. Maybe she thought I'd return once the emotions cooled, the way I always did. She underestimated what it feels like to be numb. When you're past the point of anger, There's nothing to burn out. I left the door wide open because I wanted her to see exactly how empty things became when I stopped holding them together. On the second day, the text started. First, just one, can we talk? I didn't answer. By evening, I didn't mean for it to happen like that. Still, I stayed quiet. That night, I got a notification that she had checked our shared bank account. An hour later, she transferred money from the joint checking into her personal account. I smiled. It meant she was panicking. What she hadn't realized was that the salary deposits had already been redirected. Quietly, my automatic transfers? Paused. The bills I used to pay without asking? Set to manual. My name was still on the mortgage, yes, but the utilities, the car insurance, the groceries, the maintenance costs, all of it was tied to my income. And now, she was on her own. By day 3, she tried calling. 3 times. I let it ring. No voicemail. Her fourth text said, "You're being unfair." It was almost laughable, as if fairness was something she'd valued when she let another man walk into our house, sit on our couch, and speak about me like I was just a phase she'd outgrown. On day 4, I met with the lawyer. We went through everything: assets, property, financial history. I had more documentation than he needed, because I'd been living in anticipation of this ending long before I knew how it would arrive. He asked if there was any infidelity I wanted to document. No need, I said. She's already lost everything that mattered. He nodded slowly. Then we'll file with mutual consent. But I'll ensure the financial split reflects your contributions. I thanked him, because someone finally acknowledged that I'd been showing up alone for years. That night, I drove past the house. Her car was in the driveway. The porch light was off. A small pile of takeout boxes sat near the trash can. Nothing shocking, just signs of neglect. She had made her choices. Now she was living in them. When I finally texted her, it was short and direct. I've initiated the divorce. My attorney will reach out. You'll be notified of the separation of assets. Please don't contact me directly anymore. She didn't respond. Not immediately. But the next morning, I got a series of messages like a dam breaking. Wait, are you serious? You're really throwing everything away over a mistake? You didn't even try to work through this. You're just gone. Gone? I read that one twice. The irony was impossible to miss. I'd been gone for months. Not physically, but emotionally. Silently. Inch by inch, I had disappeared from the version of me she once took for granted. The man who bought flowers when she was upset, who took care of the little things, who showed up even when he felt invisible, he was long gone. Now she noticed. And it wasn't because she missed the marriage. It was because the structure beneath her had collapsed. Without warning, without ceremony, without me. Weeks passed. She didn't fight the divorce. Not legally, but emotionally. She waged war. At first, it was denial. Short messages, almost casual, asking if we could grab a coffee, check in, talk like adults. I ignored them. Then came the guilt trips, the rewritten history, how we had built so much together, how every couple hits rough spots, how I was overreacting to one mistake. Except it wasn't one mistake. It was months of silence, years of slow erosion. And more than anything, it was the certainty in her eyes when she decided I no longer mattered. That's what I couldn't unsee. The last message she sent came one morning, almost 2 months after I walked out. It just said, "I didn't think you'd actually go." That one, I replied to. You didn't think I'd actually stay. After that, she went quiet for good. It was around that time I heard, through mutual friends, not directly, that the other guy had backed off. One friend put it gently, trying not to stir anything, but the meaning was clear. He was keeping his distance. A coworker, it turned out. One with a girlfriend of his own, who had recently found some texts she wasn't supposed to see. He wasn't interested in show, just fun. And once that collapsed, so did his interest. That was always how it goes with men like him. They don't show up for consequences. They just disappear, leaving behind the person who bet everything on their attention. There was no satisfaction in seeing her stumble through the fallout. She had made her choices. Now she was standing in the wreckage of them, looking around for someone to blame and realizing, for the first time in a long time, no one was coming to fix it. Meanwhile, I started rebuilding. Slowly, intentionally. I didn't jump into anything new. I wasn't looking for someone to patch the hole she left behind. What I wanted was to return to myself. The version of me that existed before compromise became survival. Before I learned how to walk on eggshells with a smile on my face. I got my own place. Nothing big, Just a quiet apartment on the second floor of a building that smelled like old carpet and burnt coffee, but it was mine. I started going back to the gym, mostly to feel my body again, to sweat out the fog that had crept into my life. I started calling friends I hadn't talked to in years. At first, they sounded surprised, like they hadn't expected to hear from me. I didn't blame them. I'd been buried in a marriage that left no room for anyone else, not even me. And slowly, things started to feel real again. Meals tasted better. Sleep came easier. The world didn't seem so dim. The divorce finalized quietly. No hearings. No fights over furniture or petty assets. She kept the house. I didn't argue. It was never my home by the end, just the place where I had learned how loneliness could sit beside you at the dinner table and still not say a word. I signed the papers one Thursday morning, walked out of the office into a clear sky, and just stood there for a while, doing nothing. No calls to make or explanations to give. Just breathing. I didn't tell anyone right away. It wasn't something I needed to announce. Divorce doesn't always come with fireworks. Sometimes it's just a quiet release, a slow exhale after years of holding your breath. A few nights later, I passed by a restaurant we used to love. The kind of place that felt romantic without trying too hard. I peeked inside out of habit, expecting to feel something nostalgia, maybe sadness. But there was nothing. Just the sound of silverware and soft lighting bouncing off strangers' faces. And in that moment, I understood what freedom really meant. It was about no longer waiting for someone to remember how to love you. She had forgotten long before that other man ever showed up. He was just the mirror that made her reflection impossible to ignore. Now she had to sit with it. The silence she once used to dismiss me, it followed her now. I was done living like a shadow in someone else's story. And when people ask what happened, I don't offer bitterness. I just smile and say, I stopped begging to be chosen. Because once you walk away from a love that demanded your silence, you don't go back. You build something better. Quietly, proudly, alone, until alone doesn't feel lonely anymore. And that's exactly what I did.
Dear listeners, please share your thoughts in the comments, and do not forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel.